Very good afternoon and a warm welcome back. I request you all to please kindly take your seats. We are ready to start with our next session, which is the post-lunch session. So we are ready to start with this panel discussion, which is Global Wheat and Rice Outlook, Trends and Challenges. May I take the pleasure of requesting the esteemed speakers to please join us on stage. We warmly welcome Ms. Garima Jain, Deputy CEO, LDC. A warm welcome to Mr. 𝐒𝐞𝐬𝐬𝐢𝐨𝐧, Agri Evangelist. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Nitin Gupta, Senior Vice President, Olant Agri. I hope I've got that right. Mr. Rajiv Yadav, COO, AgroCorp India. And of course, we have the esteemed moderator, Mr. 𝐒𝐵𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵 So once again, let's not be stingy with our applause. Let's give them a huge, big round of welcome. It's over to you.
Thanks a lot. I hope you had a great lunch. How many of you consume more rice than wheat? Can you raise your hands? Very limited. Okay. And how many of you consume more wheat than rice? Now, majority lies in the eyes of the person who is doing the trading in a specific commodity. Rajiv ji is doing a lot of wheat nowadays. उनको चावल में भी गेहूं दिख रहा है. वैसे आजकल sir, Sood sir, we'll try to make it a little bit informal because we all are friends, right? You know, more than the panelists. Exactly, like, you know, we are a very close community, very closely knit community of commodities. Sir, जो अभी राजीव जी से बात हो रही थी, right? गेहूं के जगह चावल खिलाना. So we start with you, Sood sir. What is the reason that actually government have to push rice to the wheat-eating population of India, and your analysis of that, sir? Sir, Mike.
Actually, मेरा संबंध गवर्नमेंट से कभी हुआ करता था, अब नहीं है, तो बड़ा मुश्किल है कहना उनके माइंड में क्या था, पर फिर भी कोशिश करता हूँ. The government of India had claimed that they had the ability to feed the whole world, our farmers, and very next day wheat exports were put under restriction. So for about a year one could say that, look, you have to keep that pretense that a person who could feed the whole world should not be importing. So that takes us to 23, and we had 24. So for the next year, what they did was they cut down wheat demand by 6 million tons. The free food program, �PMGAKY, is 24 million tons. So shrunk it to 18. And right now, after the feedback that the voter has not liked in the May elections, the April-May elections, the switch. So Rajiv, you may not be able to do it much longer, as soon as, but then they have. They announced very bravely in September that 3.5 million tons more wheat will be flowed back to �PMGAKY. But if you look at the October-November lifting, it is just about 1.4 million tons a month, which is a little lower than 1.5, which is the allotted quantity. And trust me, any bureaucracy in the world, they are smart. They can, don't stock enough wheat in some depots. The person will not get his ration. And next month he can't eat twice the amount of grain. So we have saved, like that they have saved 2.6 million tons, even from 18 million tons for up to the end of November. So this year the reason was probably elections, because maybe their calculations showed that it is necessary to keep the wheat farmer happy and not to give a signal, and particularly when that particular region has farmers' agitation, which is ongoing even today. So that could be the reason why they forced it. And if the next crop turns out to be adequate, maybe it will be seriously rolled back, because it has been officially rolled back even now, but not on the ground.
Perfect, sir. Sir, actually, unfortunately for past 3 years, we are having sub 100 million ton crop. In fact, last time we had a lot of debates, I was always giving 100 million, and actually all the other participants used to hammer me. It's a question to you, because you yourself currently are not in direct trade, so that gives you an opportunity, you can speak your heart out. Rest of the panelists, I know that, they could have a little bit of inhibition of talking about it. Sir, don't you think, 2.5 years back, if we would have opened up import, just once we banned the export of wheat, after that, the next crop was also pretty short. Why we have gone through this pain of making consumer pay 32 rupees for a commodity which was having MSP of 22 rupees 80 paisa, and still say that policy has worked?
Actually, this brings us to a subject which is very close to your heart, Deepak, like crop estimation. So whereas the prices were talking, the supply situation in the market was talking, and yet the government believed that their numbers of 112, 114 production were correct. So the numbers were at least 2 years sub 100. This year, they are between 98 to 104, 105, depending on whom we are talking to. But still, so what happened was, the policy which we discussed earlier has ensured that the private pipeline is squeezed. So they were carrying some kind of stock. Even if no one knows what is the private pipeline quantity, it is easy to work out the delta from year to year. So we find that in about 2 years, 6 million tons from private pipeline was squeezed, which is reflecting in the prices. Like this year, if the crop was 104, the private pipeline tried to restore some quantity back. It was not hoarding. It was just because the pipeline needs to work. It needs some stock. And now, maybe we have to see in these 4 months what happens to that, the extra quantity which pipeline kept to restore itself. And believe you me, there may not be much left in the private pipeline to squeeze next year, if the crop were not to be, let's say, 114, 115. And so that is what seems to have happened in this period.
That's a perfect. In fact, I was traveling across India, right, last 15 days, and the crop doesn't look that great. And then if we go by the current heat scenario, if during I'll say that the grain creation season, which is typically Jan and Feb, if still we have heat, we would be having challenge. Garima-ji, question to you, how do you see the global market shaping up? Are they comfortable, the demand supply there?
See, from India context, we always meet every 2-3 months, and we put the entire context in a very short term. Import होना चाहिए या नहीं होना चाहिए, 3 महीने बाद crop कैसी है. These are all very short term, let's say, thinking or context. Globally, I think the big change that is happening is, and we as, within the country, which we have to be very mindful, is that we recently had a US presidential election, and we know the new power now. And we also know that the new power is very serious about the policies that they want to frame for the rest of the world. We understand that, whatever said and done, China has grown on the back of US. Similarly, there are opportunities or let's say, disadvantages of aligning or not aligning with the US. Recently, the president has clearly mentioned about the tariff structure change, which can range from 20% to 60%. Where do we stand as India is still unknown. Let us assume that things are favorable for us. But with this kind of a tariff structure change, what is going to happen is that the global supply chains will once again see a new arena. Lot of disruptions are going to happen, which we have to put in context. For us now, for next year, I mean, so far we have been trying to micromanage the entire situation. You just asked a question on wheat or rice. I feel that so far government has been able to play with the distribution matrix of food. You, by choice, had given the market X amount of wheat and Y amount of rice, and it did work. Why it worked is because we are still a 2,500 per capita income economy today. Is this going to change? Yes, it is. Will it happen tomorrow? No, it will not. But we as a country have to be prepared wherein every citizen of this country is going to exercise his or her food of choice. Then how will you manipulate the distribution metrics? Coming to the third point that I wanted to share with a larger group here is that, you know, when we grow, we have to see how we become self-sufficient. Can we continue to micromanage the entire situation? Is the wheat crop going to increase significantly? Answer is no. In the previous session, Shweta touched upon limited land mass. We know that it is not going to increase. Mr. Bengani touched upon increasing productivity. Can we significantly change the crop dynamics? We cannot. So I think as a forum, we need to arrive at certain solutions. I do have a couple of them in mind. How do we have to move as a geography? But I think India is at a very delicate position as far as we, 1.4 billion population, are concerned in context of our global linkages. There is a lot to talk about. We think that wheat, we have not allowed import of wheat. That may be one answer. But how about the food, feed, and fuel complex? In some ways or other, the entire complex is being impacted, and we are increasingly getting linked to the global markets.
Perfect. So the counter question, or say add-on question to what you rightly said, is that we are seeing that because currently, by playing with the distribution, like, stopgap arrangement, government has been able to do it. But I would like to understand from you that why is there so much rigidity of not importing? Like, is there something which I am missing that, like, it's so simple common sense, right? 4 to 5 million ton is not gonna, like, make a farmer suffer when you are having price of 32 rupees. While for tuvar dal, right, it is just not about MSP, you want to open everything. Why not in wheat? Like, is wheat something which is having some different characteristic which I am not understanding?
Well, whether we as a group are not liked or not, I cannot answer that. But my answer to that is that it may not be very easy to answer given the context of India, given the context of food grain self-sufficiency, Atmanirbhar Bharat. Pulses is a different ballgame altogether because by compulsion we also wanted to be Atmanirbhar on pulses, which we couldn't be. As far as import is concerned, we have to evaluate a couple of things. Number one, if we allow import, what are the import spreads? At some point in time, it was very lucrative to actually allow wheat import into the country to some extent. Whether I propagate wheat import today, answer is no. I'm not here to propagate that concept. We are just evaluating that at some stage, the import spreads looked lucrative. It may or may not be true today. Second, we obviously have to keep in mind because these kind of decisions are going to impact long-term. Farmers have to take a decision. Wheat is losing a little bit of area in let's say, because of the subsoil and reservoir levels, water conditions in North India. However, it is gaining area from certain crops, like let's say cumin in Gujarat, or let's say Rajasthan is going to be a good crop. So we have to really keep in mind that these decisions impact long-term decisions and has long-term implications for the country, and I would assume that we have to be very mindful that we are in no position to risk a farmer situation on wheat or a wheat crop for next year. There is absolutely no negotiation on that. So I think probably that was one of the reasons that, we kind of looked at it in a very short-term perspective and thought that we are going to micromanage and deal with it.
For me, though, I understood as somebody in policy making would have seen that ad and take it seriously. 𝐒𝐿 अच्छी है. So now I will go to Nitin ji. Sir, your view on the Southeast Asia, you have been actually covering extensively. Overall scenario of wheat and rice, and how do you see that emerging? Because we are seeing that El Nino, La Nina, all these factors. Some in fact, Susab, I was amazed. Somebody said that actually weak El Nina aa raha hai. Right? How it can be weak or strong, right? So all those discussions are there. How do you see going forward, say next couple of years for overall Southeast Asia, for wheat and rice? How do you see that basket?
Deepak, I'll like to start with India first. And I think if we look at India, I think looking at a particular commodity on a standalone basis, I don't think that's the right way to look at it in current scenario. And if we talk about crops like rice, wheat, maize, pulses we have already discussed, and oilseeds. So all these 5 commodities are some or the other way interlinked with each other when it comes to production or usage or consumption, right? When we are talking about, as Garima mentioned, that there is a big debate going on between food, feed, fuel, and fiber, right? So clearly all these 5 commodities are somewhere or the other interlinked. And now what is happening because of geopolitical factors, because of climate change, so these external events has impacted these crops in one or the other way. And in some cases, we have clearly seen that inflation has gone above the roof. In some of the cases, the stock levels have come down drastically, and that has led to government taking a lot of curbs and restrictions in the last 2.5 years. So I'll clearly say that 22 and 23 were the years of restriction. Starting 24, especially on the second half, we have started seeing that a lot of easing down on those curbs and restrictions have started taking place by the government, and that's clearly on account of good monsoon, which India has seen in the last 2 years. And typically, that impact of good monsoon, we can clearly see on the Southeast Asian countries also, especially if we talk about rice. I think this year, Thailand, Vietnam, Myanmar, including Pakistan, everybody is expecting a very good crop, right? As far as wheat is there, Ukraine crop is definitely much, much better. Australia is definitely lesser. That's what the predictions are there. But if we talk about the price today in case of wheat, I think Ukraine crop would be available in India at around $270 to $80 level, which is very well within the MSP range of 2300 or 24 or 25 level. So clearly, there are parities of imports in India if that 40% of import duty restrictions can be removed. So, I think, and 25 is going to be a very, very exciting year. On a couple of fronts, India has become a net importer of corn from the net exporter. We were exporting corn for the last 2-3 years. And now we have become a net importer. In 24, we have almost 500,000 tons of corn we have imported from Myanmar and part from Ukraine on advanced licensing basis. I think for rice, it's going to be a fantastic year. And if everything goes fine, India could cross and break all the previous barriers of 22 million tons. And there is a high potential that India can even export 25 million tons of rice in 2025. So 2025, 25 million tons, that's the target rice industry has taken to reach those kind of numbers. Maize, I've clearly talked about that maize is going to be a net importer. How India will look into it, I think the next session will be on maize, so I'll not talk much about it. Pulses, definitely India is a net importer. We are now entering into a bearish cycle. We discussed that in the morning. But again, it's going to be a very interesting year, especially for a couple of commodities like chickpeas and especially in pigeon peas. Oilseeds, I would not like to take much because tomorrow again we have a session. But all in all, I think the scenarios which we have seen and experienced in last 2 years, we are going to see a complete shift in a scenario in all these 5 commodities per se.
So actually you touch upon rice. So rice, we are seeing that the farmer realization is not that great, right? There has been hammering even for the basmati. So eventually farmer would not be making money, and end of the day, definitely if we export even more, the value generated because of export and better profits is not going to trickle down to the farmers. What are your views on that? Actually, we also keep on talking about diversification, but I don't see neither government policy nor the farmer or anybody wants to diversify.
So the reason being is very, very clear. See, on the face of it, it looks that it's not a very remunerative crop to the farmers. But if you talk about rice in particular and the kind of subsidies government of India has given to rice farmers in terms of electricity, in terms of water, in terms of fertilizers, that is amounting to somewhere around 40 to 50,000 rupees. Right, so practically that is going to be the most remunerative crop to the farmers even as on today. Right, I'm not talking about today, but 2 months down the line in the month of October, you go and see the Punjab and Haryana, and you will see that they are a great pond area, right, where all the land is overflowed with the water. It's mainly because the farmers, it's supposed to be, and it is the most remunerative crop to the farmers, and definitely backed by the MSP and the procurement. So that's definitely giving an edge to the farmers. Your second question was?
Second question was that actually if we continue doing that, as you rightly mentioned, this type of support, then where is the concept of diversification? If we are giving 50,000 rupees per acre to the farmer for growing rice, why will diversify? While we say that for climate and so many things, stubble burning issues, right, that we need to break the cycle of growing too much rice in Haryana and Punjab, but still we buy 95% of whatever they produce, still we subsidize electricity, still we give free water. So then actually is the diversification for climate action is just in books, or is it really somebody wants to do it?
So there are two ways to look at it. One is, come 2011, India was producing close to 100 million tons of rice. Today, rice crop is close to 135, 130 million tons if you go by trade or government numbers, right? So definitely a 30% increase in the last 13 years, that's a big shift. So that's one part, and that's primarily on account of all these subsidies backed by MSP and procurement that is leading to that. But on the other side, I think the best part which government is doing with the support of the agri-tech startups which are coming up in agri sector, I think one is on the MSP announced on most of the agri commodities now, including corn, including most of the pulses. And then government, I think this year they are very clear that whatever corn is going to come, right, government is planning to buy as much corn as possible. It's a different matter that today corn prices are more than MSP, so government is not able to procure, right? But definitely they have an intention to slowly divert rice area, because I'm clearly seeing 44 million hectare is the rice area, which has been consistent for the last 7-8 years. And it's only because of the better productivity and better yield that the rice production is going up. And India definitely does not like, though most of the people who are into rice trade, including me, would not like, but definitely India should not and don't want 135 million tons of crop. Right, so our consumption is 100 million ton. Even if we are doing 22 million tons of export, then also we are surplus by 10 to 15 million metric ton. That area can definitely be diverted to other crop, and especially I feel for a country like India now with this ethanol story and a lot of imports coming for pulses, I think these two crops, India should start slowly moving towards that. And if India has to really become self-sufficient, corn and pulses has to touch 50 million tons by 2030. So that's the target India has to take, and I think a couple of steps have already been taken in that direction. And this is going to be a slow shift, definitely not easy, because since 1960, after Green Revolution, farmers are doing rice and wheat, and they will continue to do that unless until they clearly see an advantage in switching over to some other crop. So, but I clearly see that that change has started happening. This year we conducted some survey, and we were surprised to find that in some parts of Haryana, farmers are now, sowing corn crop. Right, so that's a clearly slow shift, but a clear visible shift which we are seeing in the field right now.
Perfect. Well, next question to you, Rajiv ji. You play in the global markets for wheat, multiple tenders, and so much of success around it. How do you see that perspective, going forward? Which would be the key markets for wheat, right, for specifically in global south?
See, from the global perspective, I would say Bangladesh continues to remain a very major market for us, and we continue to dominate that market. But before that, you asked a tough question from Garima, why not imports? So I'd like to take that difficult question now. See, I'm saying you are propagating that why not imports. I'm saying if I am from the government's perspective, I would ask, why do you require imports? I was able to manage the entire year without the Delhi prices going beyond 31 rupees, and everything was hunky-dory. South went to, let's say, 34, 35 rupees. Then that is something which the consumer is willing to pay. If I import today and the prices slash, then the farmer might not even go for wheat sowing next year. So why would I take that risk of my food self-sufficiency which I have achieved after the so-called green revolution and all that stuff. That is very critical for me, and I would like to stick to that and avoid to a large extent the imports to whatever extent possible. Secondly, this year we had good monsoon. The subsoil moisture levels are good, and the acreages were more or less decent in wheat as of now. So come what may, I am assuming that if all goes well, weather permitting, we are looking at not less than 106 or 107 million tons of wheat crop going into the next year. I mean, I know there is a long way to go. We have Feb and March temperatures yet to be washed, but if all goes well, we are looking at 106, 107, and today, if I have the off-season I was able to manage at 31 rupees of peak in Delhi, I suppose it is good enough for the consumer and good enough for my farm protection also, that the farmers are also happy making that realization. So that's my take on imports, and probably that's the angle at which the government is clearly not thinking of imports as of wheat at all, as of now.
Perfect, I agree with you, but actually I would little bit disagree, right? MSP is made for a reason, that farmers are making 50% profit. You rightly said 32 rupees, 31 rupees for Delhi. What was the MSP? At what above MSP, right? The people are buying. So when we are saying that we are okay with 40% above MSP or 30% above MSP for wheat, then we should be okay with all the commodities, right? Then we should say that see in pulses also, we reached to the level of 2.9 million metric tons of import. Then suddenly, just because tuar dal was 15% or 20% above MSP, suddenly we open the barrage and we say that all the yellow peas, we were self-sufficient. Now we have imported more than 2 million metric tons of that, right? And no farmers will go yellow pea in future for you, so you are again Atma-nirbhar, right? So this is what I'm saying. I was just saying that the love for wheat is excellent, and that love is making us to make wheat-eating public who love their wheat eat rice just because they are part of a government scheme where they give free ration.
So MSP is for a certain percentage of wheat that the farmer is going to sell to the government. Right? That stands. Now, wheat moving from 24 rupees to, let's call an average of 30 rupees, which is one of the record prices. What is the message you are giving to traders and to the farmers and to the market? The message that we have today is, one, farmer has to be protected and in all fairness. Two, that the country does not need import, which is again right because we have been able to manage the year. But the message that the market has taken is that even if there is a record rally in the prices, even then we are fine. So the message to the farmer is, जो किसान पहले 10 टन रखता था, वो आज 15 टन रखेगा. तो in effect, actually आपने farmer retention farm पे ही इतना बढ़ा दिया है. It has increased from possibly estimate, let's call an estimate from 30% to 40% because you have told the farmer कि आपको जितना खाना है उसे ज़्यादा रखो क्योंकि मार्केट में इतनी रैली है. प्राइवेट में we are under a stock limit regime, प्राइवेट में मटीरियल नहीं रहेगा, and so actually you are creating more traders out of farmers today क्योंकि वो अपनी requirement से ज़्यादा मटीरियल रख रहा है.
But that's scary because he doesn't have that expertise, risk appetite, right? In case the things go other way around, farmers with these type of losses, trade losses, right? Production losses, I can understand there is insurance. Now, if I store the grain for myself and the price crash, there is no protection for them. So I believe that's a little bit of dicey area to be in. So next round of, sir, Sood sir, next question to you. Sir, when we have seen that, specifically when we talk about rice, we are having huge amount of rice as buffers. I wouldn't say buffer, I'm saying government stocks, right? We are having huge amount of that. And still in a panic decision, we decided to ban it, right? The export of rice. Now, I have been talking to some of those traders, or I'd say that entrepreneurs, who believe invest in export market, because we also, when we say that India used to have, we are looking at $100 billion of export in next 4 to 5 years, that is what we aspire to. And rice would be very critical, important part of it. Now the challenge is that this guy has put in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years of effort invested money and being in such conferences in Dubai, in Europe and all that, spend all of that money. And once he has created that excess, then we have a ban. Now, do you think like, someone like that person would start again put that effort, knowing that actually like, if just there is a spike in a price for whatever reason, then suddenly you will kill my business?
Well, in the earlier session, Shiraz Saab has said, large population, largest in the world, and inflation is a major concern always, not now, but for maybe 4 or 5 decades. And with that backdrop, when you observe that inflation in rice was 12%, on the top of that high level, 13% next year and 8% this year in the open market, what would a trader expect the government to do? To open exports or to restrict exports? Because exports will be from the pipeline, not from the FCI stocks. And pipeline is already giving a signal. And they tried OMS in rice. It didn't work because of the peculiar nature of rice market. And the small size of the trader doesn't have much resources, the rice trader. So that is the justification why rice exports restriction continued. And what did it do? It chopped off 5 million tons of exports. Not much, because we still exported 14, 15, 16 million. So it was burdensome, because the last straw on the back of the camel. But probably given the context of the political economy of India, it was something which they had to eventually do. This year, now the next question can be, why this year then? This year, the thought process is the government didn't have probably place to stock. And they took a wager that in spite of whatever inflation is there, at the harvest time, let's open another channel. Maybe somebody will participate in the market along with the government to buy it for export. And the internal thought process is that they will watch it for a few months on pace of exports, whether it's taking off the surplus or not, and behavior of prices. And then there could be a review in March, there may not be a review in March. But that is basically the backdrop in which the restriction remained. And rice is not one. This year probably basmati crop is 11. So basmati is different kind of rice. And all those other varieties of rice, which are matta and this and that, could be about 11 million tons more. You have 24, 25 million percent on farm retention. So how much is left in the market? Very little. Half the crop is procured by government, 50 million tons. 22 million tons gone away this way, 72. About 30 million kept by the farmer. 100 is over. So the balance is in the market, and along with the other varieties. So if you fragment the open market structure, it is not a 150 million tons market. And that's why there's distortions. 3 years of massive exports, rising from 12 million to 22 million, they squeezed out the private pipeline. And right then you had 2 years of lower crop.
Perfect. How many of you have ever had khichdi? Can you raise your hands? So with all the additional rice government is having and all the pulses which are actually being stocked in all the godowns and imported from other part of the world, as a Indians, we should start eating more khichdi. We will solve national problem. Over to you, Nitin ji. Come again? Yeah. So now, Nitin ji, the question to you, like, as Sutsap said and Garima ji was also talking about, now I'm shifting a little bit from the policy part of it about like, see, Olam has been very smart in hedging their risks. And typically large corporates do that, right? If they take exposure in one market, they would find place. And they love those commodities where they can hedge their risk. do you think that even government should start thinking like that, that in case for wheat or rice, right, we can have a mechanism, I think Sood Sahab has already done it, so I'll circle back to you, where we can have a possibility where we can hedge in the external markets, right, based on if we perceive there would be shortage, or like, as it's currently we are having very minimal buffer, so when the prices were like, pretty low, like $230, $240, we can take a position. So do you think that, that government should also get into something of hedging in the mindset, because type of size which we are having, we are humongous, right? We stop export, the whole global market of rice shoots up. And similarly, if tomorrow the government says that actually, like, I want to, and see, that's also, government should not say how much they want to import. They should say we are just opening up import. So in case they say that, like, 5 million ton import or 6 million ton, suddenly you'll find that there is a spike. So don't you think that, hedging is some activities government should also be doing?
My personal take is that government is already doing that by creating buffer stocks in the country. I think that's the biggest hedging mechanism they have. I'm not a personal propagator of government, one, getting involved into the business directly. Second, trying to build stocks or creating hedge by stocking these commodities in some foreign land. I'm definitely not a believer of that because that requires a very different kind of a skill set. And I feel that government should act as an enabler in ensuring that the trade is doing all right kind of practices and ensuring and managing all the right kind of risk so as to ensure that the demand supply is properly maintained over there, though it cannot be 100% equilibrium can be achieved, but that's how government can play a better role over there. If you talk about wheat, my thought process would be that government might not like to open up the complete wheat import, but seeing the scenario in India where a lot of wheat or most of the wheat move from northern part of India to southern part of India. So opening up a couple of south ports for the wheat import, I think that's one option. Government has now some cooperatives through in, they can do some G2G mechanism, also can build some buffer stocks at their levels and then slowly can continue to pump in those stocks into the market and then control the prices. So these are some of the ways by which government can hedge these crops or commodities and definitely can regulate the trade better.
Excellent ideas. In fact, very, very pertinent point. When you said that government can get into some G2G and can build a buffer of few million tons, and then actually they can, in case, if required, they can also control prices. Sood Sahab, your views?
When did the government buy G2G any commodity, but for a small quantity here and there? I would say I don't remember at all.
They have done in exports.
Yeah, export
they have done.
No, sir, it is not G2G. When you get hold, let's say government Senegal, it wants to import 100,000 tons of rice. It approaches government of India, it issues a permit. The government doesn't dirty its hands in buying the rice and exporting. G2G will be when the government or its own agency exports. So government, somebody else facilitated export, somebody else was nominated at the other end, and it was the rice from the pipeline which went, not from FCI. G2G was when we sent 50,000 tons of wheat to Afghanistan. That is G2G. G2G is when we used to get PL480 wheat. So now, from now to April, the scenario on wheat is very clear. Stock on 1st December is 20.6. The commitment in PDS is 6. And buffer stock 7.5, 2.5 OMS. That leaves something like 4 million tons balance. And now we know that their logistics result in some failure, 10-20% lesser lifting from PDS. So there's so much of wheat available in the buffer. This 100,000 tons a week, two auctions have subdued the market, has arrested the price rise. Suppose it becomes 500,000 tons a week, which is quite possible because they have the stock. How this miracle happened was because 2.6 million tons lower lifting from April to November, and that's all in stock. So there's no way, more than 100% chance, that there is not going to be any import, whether southern ports or northern ports or anybody. If the government were to do a mistake of G2G for FCI, the wheat will lie in godowns, no consumer would want it. They will have to subsidize it heavily, give it to millers. because as it is, the Russian wheat, well, I am old enough among the whole, maybe in the whole hall, to remember the wheat which used to come in rations. When that was the only substantial source of supply in the households. How bad the quality was, and that is the kind of wheat which will come. And then they will say, we'll not give it to, it should not be grown in north. It will be then supplied only in southern mills. They'll buy a stone around their neck. Smartest thing would be to waive the duty. The prices are sufficiently subdued. It can come within 3,400 rupees to any southern mill. But that is one. But why should they do that with 20.6 million tons in stock?
True. Rajiv ji, next question to you, right? Now, again, going back to the global perspective, because I want to pick your brain more on actually how you are able to sell so much of wheat while India is not exporting. So what are the destinations you see going forward, right? For the export trade, I am saying that you think not as an Indian now, right? आप बांग्लादेश में इतना बेचते हो, तो इंडिया का तो बेचते नहीं हो, right?
इंडिया में गवर्नमेंट ने मना कर रखा है, अदरवाइज जरूर दे देते हैं.
But
anyhow, imports are still happening. I mean, a lot of people would know it, obviously. Whatever wheat products which are going out, you have the advanced license being issued by the government of India, and against that you can happily import. So ITC is the leader in that, and followed by all the millers of South and even your Gujarat and all these people. They are already importing, and they continue to import. Both Australia and Ukraine are the origins which are making sense into India today.
Perfect. And they are also making sense for your other export markets, Bangladesh and all that?
No, I mean for, obviously from the origination perspective, it's Canada, Australia, Ukraine, Russia, and in spite of the so-called Ukraine and Russia war and all that stuff, but the shipments are still happening. We are facing not much of the logistics challenges there, and we are able to ship on time. The Southeast Asia, whether it is Vietnam, Thailand, from the wheat perspective, they continue to remain, Bangladesh, they continue to remain the major markets for us. Southeast Asia is the biggest consumption hub from the demand perspective.
And what are your views on Africa as a market for wheat?
Africa as a market is currently being ruled by your Ukraine and Russians. They are the ones who are supplying maximum cargoes to those markets. We have not been able to enter into those markets in depth as of now.
Perfect. So now we are close to the and so the final, Garima ji, again assuming that the government is sitting here, right, and you are having access to the Honorable Prime Minister, right, what would be your take or suggestion or recommendation to ensure that actually longevity of Indian grain trade, specifically when we talk about wheat and rice?
I think the future of the industry will come via investments. We all have to work a lot to ensure that tech in agriculture brings about the change that is much required in this space, given the fact that we are going to grow at a handsome rate. And because of that, I will suggest the government to give a fair share of space to all the existing stakeholders to ensure that everybody is happy in this space and is able to contribute.
सूद साहब, मोदी जी आपको सुन रहे हैं, क्या कहना चाहेंगे उनसे?
Well, Garima has put it very well. It's very difficult to add to, because that is something which will ensure welfare all round. And well, we all talk of stable policies by the government. So we'll suggest that the changes should not be sudden. Change is inevitable because of the political economy of the country. But the only thing they should focus is on productivity. It's so disappointing that the agriculture research budget has shrunk this year, if you index it for the price rise. And that should be the priority area rather than spending 250,000 crores on lakh crores on food subsidies. which basically end up either as rice exported or basically on operation of the FCI.
Perfect, sir. I totally agree with you. Productivity has been a challenge. And I think, as you rightly pointed out, until unless you invest in research, right, we'll keep on talking about productivity should increase, right? Just by doing business model changes or perception building, yields don't change. It needs very pure research. And to the forum, actually, I would suggest, if you get any time, look at a technology called CRISPR-Cas, right? It is doing phenomenally great work. And India, SDN1 and SDN2 is considered non-GMO. So even editing we are allowing, but the research is not happening at the grassroots level.
And actually our approach to production increase has been MSP. Look at the MSP of groundnut. It is about 100% over cost of production. Over all these years that the production remained stagnant, the groundnut consumer has shifted away to other oils. This year, it is not been able to find markets at MSP. It's grossly below. And now, do you suggest that the government buy it up? Do what with it? And the farmer who has gone away to sunflower or cottonseed oil and finds it quite okay won't come back in a hurry. So they must allow the price to drop to find the demand. And so in the discussions throughout the day, MSP has been considered to be sacrosanct. I would like to submit it is not. You look at the MSP in relation to cost of production. If it is 25, 30%, 50% over the cost of production which is promised, it may be all right. Look at mustard, a similar story. And mustard is a premium oil. You produce with unrealistic MSP and produce so much of it that it has to convert it into inferior oil by refining to sell below the price of soybean oil to find a market. This model can't work. So excessive emphasis on MSP should not be there, and they should allow the prices to drop below if they, in those cases.
Perfect. Sir, your take on what should be government doing going forward to ensure that this market is, as 𝐒𝐤𝐬𝐲 said, is futuristic, forward-looking, and we ensure it's sustainable market for all the stakeholders. I'm just not saying farmer and consumer, but even that the trade. If trade disappears, believe me, not a single grain from farmer will reach the consumer. Because there is this thought process, and a lot of, when we talk about tech, so I used to see a lot of tech pitches. So marketplace pitch, now marketplace is nearly as good as dead in egg tech. The first pitch would be we'll disintermediate the value chain. We'll remove the middleman. Then what you'll do? We'll become the middleman. So that is a problem. So your view, sir, to make this whole ecosystem healthy.
So a couple of points here. One, I think Government of India, or especially, they have to focus on the infrastructure and the logistic efficiency. I think that's one clearly area which can improve the turnaround time and efficiencies of a couple of commodities in a country like India, like anything. You see the port conditions in Kakinada or Kandla, which are the two biggest break bulk port in the country today, and the conditions are abysmal over there. And India's logistic cost is somewhere between 8 to 12%. If we compare the same, at least for the rice exports for a country like Thailand or Vietnam, there it is 2 to 3%. And it's primarily because most of their transportation is through river transport. So I think our Prime Minister mentioned about that they are focusing on developing the river transport in the country. I think that's one area where clearly that work is to be required. Second, in a crop like rice, I don't think that Government of India need to buy 55, 60 million tons. They should, as early as possible, start shifting towards direct benefit transfer to the farmers. India does not require to have 40, 50, 60 million ton kind of a buffer stock in rice. And I think that will have a ripple effect on other crops. Once government will lower down the procurement of rice to that extent, automatically that will incentivize farmers to switch to other crops, to the question which you asked earlier. And I think these two things I would suggest.
And in Haryana, easily they can do that.
Yeah, of course.
They've got 5 years to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Rajiv ji, your views, sir?
So I would be addressing the government by saying that if 18% of blending of ethanol is mandatory and you are taking it that seriously, then please allow a high level of hybridization. 𝐒𝐤𝐬𝐲, I would put it very strongly, there is a need for Indian corn to migrate to GMO corn. That's something which would be my take from the corn.
Excellent. Definitely GM will be discussing. We are having maize session next section. And in fact, you'll be surprised, we are having guests from from Brazil, right? Março, which is actually one state they produce more maize and soybean than whole of India, and they are having awesome productivity. So I think there is a lot of learning for us going forward. Do we have time for a question or no? We don't have. Thank you. She never gives me time to do anything which I feel like doing. No issues. Thanks a lot for to all my panelists and the awesome audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking us through this very engaging discussion. May I invite on stage Ms. Ayati to kindly do us the honors of presenting a small token as a thanks and appreciation to the esteemed panelists. We take this opportunity of thanking Ms. Garima Jain. Our heartfelt thanks to Mr. 𝐒𝐞𝐬𝐲. Our thanks to Mr. Nitin Gupta. And Mr. Rajiv Yadav. And of course, a big thanks to our esteemed moderator for steering this discussion. Thank you. And may I request you all to please join us front and center for a group photo op. So we are taking the discussion from global wheat and rice outlook to now global maize and millet outlook. But before that, they made a small reference to khichdi. It's rather injustice to our international audience who do not know what khichdi is. It's a very interesting combination of lentils and rice cooked together. And believe you me, in India, it's comfort food. If you're unwell, you eat khichdi. If you're happy, you eat khichdi. If you don't have anything to eat, you make a quick concoction of lentils and rice, and you have it. And every region, every state has its own version, which is equally delicious and wonderful.